Before we begin, I would like to take just a minute or two to pay tribute to the benefactor of this evening's occasion, the patron of the Sirchio Lecture series, Chris Sirchio, Cranbrook class of 1983. We are observing the 26th year of the Sirchio Distinguished Lecture Series, which has brought back to campus the sons and daughters of Cranbrook Kingswood and Cranbrook and Kingswood when they were single schools, such luminaries as Daniel Ellsberg, Natalie Zaman Davis, Michael Barone, Ward Just, Todd Williams, Catherine Olkin Seibert, just to name a few. So, Chris, we're very indebted to you. This is also special because we, with this occasion, are placing a kind of a seal over a long kind of pedigree or ancestry of outstanding Cranbrook soccer players. In our audience tonight, we have soccer players from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and 40 years ago. If you played soccer for Cranbrook, would you, in any capacity, middle school, upper school, would you stand up for just a second? Kids too? Yeah. Fantastic. So, while he was here, Chris was the president of the student council. He was voted the outstanding senior by the faculty. He was a Mr. Soccer of Michigan and went on to Duke University with a very, very successful career there. As a professional, like so many of our wonderful athletes, the athletes of Cranbrook Kingswood undertake to do the work of good. They undertake to do community work, as Chris has done, and has done wonderful things for communities across the nation. So, Chris, would you say a few things, please?
Thank you, Charlie. 26 years that we've been celebrating and bringing back an amazing alumni to reconnect with our students. And the real purpose of the speaker series is to help students see beyond what's directly in front of you, to find something bigger than yourself, and to aim high. And I want to pay special thank you to Dr. Lillian Bowder, who almost 30 years ago, somehow listened to a proposal and said, sure. And I think she saw a lot more of what was possible than any of us, but she had the wisdom to get Dr. Welsh, who was the faculty champion at the time. And Dr. Welsh really figured out how to get this series into the fabric of the community. And I am just so grateful for his leadership and all of his counsel. And he had the great wisdom to hand off to Charlie, who was a coach and a mentor and a great friend of mine in the 80s, and more importantly, a wonderful friend that I get to carry that on with now. And of course, Arlie Seibert, who made a big, big push to help us throughout that time. If you could give those folks a big round of applause, I'd appreciate that. You know, as you reflect about these evenings, you get them once a year. And for me, I've been thinking about this. And before we get on to Alexi and just the amazing opportunity we have to listen to him tonight, I was reflecting on, I really think in my heart of hearts, and you can see all the fellows up there, this is a celebration of the Cranbrook soccer community. There is no question in my mind that, especially tonight with Alexi coming back and many of the people who are come back and part of that community, we would not be doing what we're doing. We wouldn't be here if it was not for the special experiences that we had here at Cranbrook. And I can't help it, but I did want to just share a quick story about that. that really touches my heart. When the Booth family figured out where to put Cranbrook, they clearly understood the magic and the energy of this area. There is no question that the nature at the time and where they put that was specially thought through. And for me personally, when I think of the epicenter of that energy, it is the soccer field on the lower fields. It is my field of dreams. And I've thought about that analogy more and more, and I just can't help but take advantage of this to share with you, because I'm not sure everybody understands what's been nurtured throughout the ages and what an incredible job Chad and his team are doing with Charlie to steward this. But when you go back to the 1980s, when we were playing, Thursday nights, just like tonight in the summertime, was the time when all the guys would come back. It didn't matter if you played at Cranbrook, if you played at another high school, if you played at another college, middle school. Every spring, we waited for that first kind of call to go out. We didn't have email and texts and all that stuff to go on. We didn't know who was going to show up. But you drove up from all over the state because of the community that was there. And you'd sit, if you think about the Field of Dreams movie, you remember that special scene when they play out the camera out to the corn stalks, and you see the guys come through the corn, and it's these incredible players. Well, our Field of Dreams moment was the parking lot. And you would sit on the bleachers, and we'd all get there early to talk smack and tease each other and hang out. And then you'd hear a car come in, and you'd hear the gravel crack under the tires, and you'd hear the car door open, and somebody would come out. And we'd all turn around to see who through the corn stalks or through the parking lot would come. And there were some amazing, amazing people. And I want to just take a moment. It is beyond thought for me when you think of the people that have come through that field. Every one of us has dreamt of being a professional something. You play in your backyard, whether it's soccer, basketball, football. You dream of being that player, and you have that in your mind. Well, in those days, we didn't know. We had a red-headed, scrawny guy who wasn't me at the time, of course. I had a lot of red hair, but we had Alexi, who was a few years behind us, who was playing with us, and we had a lot of other guys. But just, I have to share this for a moment. They didn't know who they were going to become or who they were going to play for. But we had all county players. We had all region champion players. We had all-state players. We had first-team all-state players, dream team players. We had guys that went on to college and played all divisions. We had a national championship. We had a Herman Trophy winner, right? We had people that played professional all over the entire United States, who played professional in Europe, who played on teams that traveled to Brazil, played in Pele Stadium all the way to China. And we had an Olympian, and we have a World Cup star. You think about that. And the thing that makes me so amazed and touched by this is that they all come back. They all come back. And I think Charlie and I were talking about, there's something special about this place. And the guys didn't stop there, right? They didn't define themselves as just soccer players. Everyone who stood up, everybody is there, is connected by something else to give back, to be part of something bigger. And I really do believe it's connected to the motto of our school. When you think about the Aim High story in Virgil's Aeneid, and when all the 4 archers get down to shoot, the first guy hits the mast, the second guy gets down and he misses, the third hits the dove's the cord, the dove flies away, and the fourth guy, or the next guy, gets down before the dove gets away, and he shoots the dove right in the middle of the heart, and the dove falls, and everybody celebrates. We all know the story of the archer. Well, there's somebody else on the other side, and that other person was not caught up in the celebration. He realized that there was something bigger. He realized that there was something bigger than the target, and he aimed high in the sky, and the gods tipped his arrow with fire. We all know it's shooting star, the smoke, the whole piece, but everybody saw that spirit. I think that's the spirit that the Cranbrook soccer community creates. And every year these guys come back. They're presidents, they're CEOs, they are carpenters, they are from all walks of life, but they have that spirit in them to give back and be a part of something bigger. So I would like to recognize, we have Mickey Price, who's been a coach in the early 80s. We've got Charlie, who was a coach. Chad, I can't see, there you are. We have some amazing stewards of this incredible, incredible community. If you all would give yourselves a huge round of applause. And the thing about it is, I don't think that any of us are finished. You know, as Churchill said, success is not final, failure is not defeat, and the only thing that matters is the courage to go on. I think Cranbrook has given us a huge quiver of arrows. And every day we get the chance to shoot some more arrows into the sky. Whether you make a phone call to somebody to help them out, or you go on a trip with them, or you take care of them in any special way, or you bring your child or your son here to watch Alexi speak and listen about what he's doing and creating that's bigger than soccer itself, that really makes it a massive difference and makes us special. So tonight, I shared a little bit last year very quickly. This lecture series was really inspired by my grandfather, who created the John L. Finley Green Foundation Leadership Series in Fulton, Missouri. One of his biggest speakers was Winston Churchill, who gave his Iron Curtain speech there 73 years ago. And I won't go into the whole story, but that speaker series continues and inspires me with Charlie, for all the people that we keep bringing back that have the same qualities. And they brought out Lech Walesa, Margaret Thatcher, Hubert Humphreys, Harry S. Truman, Bernie Sanders. You know, it goes the list, Gerald Ford, George W. Bush. Those guys have the same quality of all of our alumni. And I want to share this, and then I'll let Alexi take the stage with Charlie. Speakers today, leaders today, you know, there's a lot of transparency in the world, more than any have been in the history because of the internet. And people take decisions faster than ever before because they're empowered at a couple clicks to do so. I think, and I know you will hear Alexi talk about this, there is a sense of accountability for leaders today that is totally different and so important. Our leaders today have to have a clear vision and voice. They have to have a real understanding of what is important and where they are connected and grounded. And they've got to be clear, and they've got to be agile. And I think the thing about Alexi that stands out for me personally, well beyond all of his amazing soccer accolades, is Alexi has an amazing, authentic voice. And he's not afraid to share it. And I think leaders today who are able to take the amazing talents and experiences that they've had and step up to use their voice for good, for something bigger, is exactly what we've all intended as a school, as a community, and I couldn't be prouder to have Alexi be a part of our series. And thank you, Charlie, for bringing him back. Let's get him up here. Charlie.
You have to endure only a couple more pieces of information. Alexi, where are you? Well, let's do a dramatic entrance. So, the story is already well known. One of the most recognizable figures in American soccer, and now, of course, soccer analyst, journalist, and podcaster. You need to be on the State of the Union podcast and go and join the 400,000 Twitter followers that stay abreast of all of Alexi's comments. He was the first American ever to play in the Serie A of Italy, where he anchored the defense for Padova. He was the U.S. Soccer Athlete of the Year, and in 10 years he brought the MLS, Major League of Soccer, from obscurity into prominence as a player and then also as a manager. When he was here, he was the captain of his senior year team. He was Mr. Soccer of Michigan and Gatorade All-American selection. He led Rutgers to a Final Four and a national championship, and he is now in the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame and the National Soccer Hall of Fame. But it is those qualities that Alexi reduced down and distilled here that have made him into a maker of values and difference that he is. It was here that he wept, he laughed, he was an incisive wit. Alexi's his thirst to compete, His desire for contest distinguished him throughout his years here. He marched in green tights with the master singers at the senior pageant and sang above everybody else. Captained the state championship hockey team, and he also won our school's talent show. And he continues to produce wonderful, wonderful music. Above all else, this is an individual in whom he's no longer just the photograph on the right side of the Keppel Hall Gymnasium. It's just really him, and in his blood pulses that aim high and find a friend. This is a special evening for me because this is a young man who made a huge difference in our lives here, huge difference in my life as a coach. Lexi, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
I'm here. Chris, where's Chris? Where are you? You have a speaker series. It's incredible. Did you quote Churchill a second ago, and then tell the Archer story? Son of a, you're killing me up here, man. This is. I gotta edit. I gotta edit a lot of stuff here. So this is. Thank you for all the kind words. This is incredibly humbling to be here and to be back here. And I think it is true that everybody comes back. Eventually, everybody comes back, and it's this incredible pull of not just the place, but the people. It's so humbling that I got up this morning, and after the incredible gray that you have been enduring, that every Michigan person knows about, got up this morning, and it was beautiful. The sunlight was there, and so I said I'm going to go run at Cranbrook, and once again go down to the lower fields and pay homage. And I felt good about myself. I felt good about life. I felt, sense of nostalgia and emotion and passion, and set out across the tundra there, and eventually made my way up to where the school buses now drop off the kids going back and forth, the high schoolers going back and forth. And I came up over the horizon. The sun was brilliant, and the school bus was coming to drop them off, and I waved, and then I hit the ice, and my feet went up in the air, and I found myself on the back. And then you go through that calculation. All right, so did they see me? All right. If they saw me, how many of them saw me? And those that did see me, did they see the first part? Did they see the last part with my legs up in it? And most importantly, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to play this, right? Is it a get up, no problem, I'm fine, and all that? First off, you're fine no matter what. Even if there is protruding bone, you're walking behind the bush, all right, and then you're going to tape it up. But you are not going to show fear or doubt or certainly pain in front of high schoolers on a bus that are, I'm sure, armed with cell phones. So it is a humbling experience to come back. And it is the same place right there where Lenny, the bus driver, used to drop me and so many others off, a man who is near and dear to my heart in terms of his aesthetic, and not just his aesthetic with his beard that I went on to pattern myself after, but also who he was as a person. So it all comes back full circle, and then it will kick you in the ass, which is what happens. I wear cheaters now, so I'm gonna put these on. I don't have a PowerPoint or anything like that, and so what I want to do is just talk a little bit and then open it up to questions, because I know some of you, but I don't know a lot of you, and I've found that when we do these things, the questions, that's where the meat is, that's where the good stuff is, because if there is some sort of information that I can impart, I'm not going to know unless you actually ask it. So I hope you do have questions. We're going to save plenty of time to do questions. But I should give a disclaimer here that this is not going to be a TED Talk. This is certainly not going to be any type of Tony Robbins motivational guru walk on coals type of speech. And with the teachers that are in attendance that had the misfortune of having me in their class, they can agree that this is certainly not going to be any type of scholarly lecture on anything. And so whenever I talk to people, I readily admit that I don't have all the answers. I have very few of the answers, as a matter of fact, and whether those of you that are older will agree, eventually you realize that none of us has all the answers. And I also recognize that many of you may be into soccer. Some of you are, I know, and it was so cool to see all the different soccer folks from Cranbrook stand up and all the different eras and times. But I know that not everybody is into it, or maybe you're into it a little bit. And so when I'm talking about soccer here, maybe when I say the word soccer, replace it with something else, something that you love, something that you have a passion for, and maybe it will work. Some of it won't work because it's just soccer specific, but try to do that as often as you possibly can when I say soccer, because maybe that will keep you from walking out. I also should probably, in this day and age, apologize and acknowledge, maybe not apologize, but certainly acknowledge the incredible opportunity and advantage and, yes, privilege that I had, not only going to Cranbrook, but growing up in Birmingham. And the reality is that I, unlike people that I played with and against, I did not escape the slums or the barrios or the favelas like players that I did play with and against did. I did not escape a country or a culture where there was war and crime and poverty and violence like players that I did play against and with did. I did not migrate from a different country or immigrate from a different country for a better life and have to assimilate into a different culture and language and lifestyle. All of that is to say is that I am incredibly fortunate and incredibly privileged to have been able to live the life that I have lived so far, and that Cranbrook was such a huge part of my life. And even though from a time period it's very small, it still is huge. And I think that I'm echoing everything that anybody would say and that has said, is that it stays with you forever. It clings to you, like B.O. or something. I don't know. I didn't write that. That's not what I meant to say, but you know what I'm saying, right? But I am a product of the Midwest Michigan suburbs. I am a product of Slurpees and Bubble Yum and the Red Wings and all of that. And I'm not going to apologize for that, but I just want to lay that out as I'm telling you the key to life going forward. So all I'm saying is that I'm going to give you how soccer has influenced the way I see life and how it has infected everything that I do in a wonderful way. And this is obviously a labor of love. It's something that many of us in here have and have, always had. And so my first thing, and I'm going to go through a couple little things, and like I said, I don't have a PowerPoint or anything like that, but my first thing is that soccer finds you, okay? Many years ago, you look at me and you see 6'4" redheaded guy who gets sunburned inside, and you say, he's Greek. He's got to be Greek, right? This is what happens when a Greek goes to college in the U.S. and meets a Jersey girl, and this is what you get. But I did grow up in Greece, and we were talking about Thursday nights and the importance of those Thursday nights, and we lament the fact that in our current society, just and not for anybody's fault, it's just kind of the way that it's gone, but the whole pickup game, the whole what do you call it when it's stickball type of existence doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. And certainly moms and dads aren't kicking their kids out and saying, be home at dinner time and figure it out as you go along. Well, growing up in the 70s, I was a young kid in Athens, and that's what my mom did. She kicked me out and said, go figure it out. Not only did she kick me out into a country and a culture that I did not speak the language, and I looked like this. And inevitably, you find that dirt field, and you find that existence. And I walked down to the corner, and I sat on the corner for days and watched the kids play, all the neighborhood kids coming in. And they knew I was the American kid over there. And then, as time goes by, it becomes necessary because somebody doesn't show up, and there's your opportunity. But you're American, first off, and so you're not playing on the field, you're going in goal. Fine, I'm on the field, that's fine with me. Put me in goal, at least I'm on. And now, all the time, I'm learning Greek words. Many bad words, but you have to survive, and sometimes that's very, very important. But that sandlot type of culture was what exposed me to the game and how soccer found me, and the discovery of what soccer can be, and what is this game? What is this game that I'm playing, that everybody's playing, and I feel something for every single time I'm on the field? And what is this game, and where has it been, and what is the history of it? And you start to discover more and more about the game, and through the game to discover more and more about yourself, even at a very young age. And it's a small part of my athletic development, but it's a huge, huge, crucial part, because there were no coaches, there were no parents. It was just kids running around having fun, but in that learning about the game, and learning about themselves, and learning lessons that you take on in life. And finally, in terms of soccer finding you, it found me, and it gave me ownership of something. This was mine. This was something, I grew up in a household where my father was a professor and my mother was a writer, and so it was a very academic type of household. And to say that they dreamt of their firstborn to be a professional soccer player or athlete, that would not be true. Doesn't mean they weren't proud, but this was mine. This was a sport that my father knew very little about. It's not that they weren't supportive, and they knew that it kept me out of trouble, and that I was good at it and something I like to do, and so they supported me in that sense. But this was ownership. This was my thing. It was la cosa mia, I guess. There's more la cosa nostra later, but this was cosa mia, and at that point it was my thing and something that I could hold on to. And then soccer romances you. And for those that are into soccer, they know, even if you're not 100% in, soccer will find a way to romance you and will pull you in. And I came back to Detroit. And I came back and I did everything that many of the kids here do, and that many kids across the country do. I played youth soccer. I played with mom and dad coaching. I played with orange peels and juice boxes at halftime. And I graduated to the travel leagues that everybody does. And this, for me, was not just a sport, but was a lifestyle. This was who I am. The other part of it was there's very few things in life that bind us and have a thread that is global, that is international. And I vividly remember getting up with my soccer ball, and whether it was going down to the lower fields when I was older, or even when I was younger, juggling my ball on the sidewalk or anywhere with a soccer ball, and thinking to myself, and I'm 10 years old, and I'm juggling this ball. There's a 10-year-old kid on the other side of the world doing the exact same thing. Now, that kid might speak a different language. He may have been raised completely differently. The way he thinks about the world, about his country, all of that kind of stuff might be different. But it was so cool to me to be able to say that there's somebody else doing the exact same thing that I'm doing. And we talk about, think globally, act locally, and that kind of stuff. So I was acting locally, but I was thinking globally in terms of what this sport was giving me. And it was always so cool, and I was so proud of the fact that I was playing a sport that the world played. And it doesn't mean that I don't love hockey and I don't love American sports, quote unquote. But the international aspect of this game, and I'll talk more about it in a little bit, was something that I loved. And there was that romance with that sport. Soccer, like a lot of sports, will break you too. I was talking earlier to a young man who is just coming off of an injury, and there's other injuries. And as you go through sports, especially when you're young, you think you're invincible, and then you get hurt. And I'm not talking about just, a paper cut or something like that or something. You actually get hurt. And this thing that you love is taken away. And in that second, you are shown that you are not invincible. And things can happen. And it forces you to react from a physical perspective and internally to react. And I love that about the game of soccer, but that can apply to all other sports. And these are the lessons that it kept teaching you. And sometimes it brings you way down, and then it'll slowly build you back up. The defeats. I was the kiss of death last fall to the varsity team as I gave them a pep talk, and then they went off and lost the game. So that won't be happening anymore, right, Chad? But we were talking earlier. I guarantee you that the scores and all that kind of stuff that will come and go. And yeah, there'll be great moments, and you'll be able to reminisce. But the people that you are with, the times in the back of the bus or in the van, or the stupid things, that's the good stuff. That's what you will remember, and that's so important. But you will learn, and you will learn through all of those defeats, and you will learn when you win. And I love that about soccer, and obviously that applies to pretty much every sport, which is why I believe that young men and women need to be involved in sports, because of the lessons that it teaches. It also, soccer will break you in terms of the failures and the mistakes that you made. I continue to make mistakes, plenty of mistakes, whether it's on air for everybody to see or behind the scenes in the decisions that I make, the things that I do. I like to think I'm making less of them, but I still make mistakes, and soccer will expose you, and soccer will show you what those mistakes are on the field, whether it's kicking the ball in your own net, whether it's missing a mark or anything like that. Those mistakes, soccer will show you, say, hey, you weren't good enough today, but that's okay. And that's something that I love about sports, and obviously something I love about soccer. As I mentioned before, soccer teaches you, and I live very close to the airport for a specific reason, because I travel so much. It's part of my job, but I love it. I love the lessons and the adventures that I have had specifically because of soccer. I've been all over the world and seen the world in a really unique and different way. Sometimes it's behind German shepherds and machine guns and police escorts and moats and crazy fans throwing batteries and coins and urine and all sorts of stuff like that. But soccer has given me these opportunities that I never, ever would have had, to see these countries and to see these cultures and to have an appreciation and to have a perspective on, once again, how lucky I am, and even from a team perspective, how lucky we are as a team when I'm traveling or when I'm traveling as a team from a TV perspective. We talked about all the lessons that sports can provide. And there's a big debate going on right now about the proper path, or just the path for a young soccer player. I took what now is, I guess, considered a antiquated or certainly not, or more traditional type of path of going to college and playing in college. Now we have, 10,000 hours, and we have players that are playing sports exclusively and not playing anything else. And we also, from a soccer perspective, have young players that are good, that are bypassing college. And in our effort to make better soccer players, sometimes we forget that what I believe is also our responsibility is to make better people, all right? Because these are the young Americans that are going to lead our country. These are the young men and women that are going to lead everything about our country, even after they've kicked the ball. And so soccer teaches you the different ways that you can take. And the way that I took was through college. And as I said, they're not doing that anymore. And sometimes we focus so much on the 90 minutes of a soccer game that we forget that the ability to deal with the other 22 and a half hours is crucial to that 90 minutes. There are some very few savants and players that are just so insulated and isolated that's all that they can do. In my experience, the players, and the majority of the good players, are the ones that figure out how to deal with that 22 and a half hours. You're either good or you're not on the field, and you can certainly get better. But one of the ways is to give them the tools, and many of the tools that we acquire when we go to college. and the experiences, the experience of failure, the experience of responsibility, the social experiences that you have, getting your heart broken for the first time, getting in trouble, the responsibility of homework and grades and all that kind of stuff. We lose some of that. And soccer can only teach you so much. But I hope going forward that there's a recognition while we start to produce better soccer players and we start to be very, very targeted as to what they're doing. I hope that we maintain and understand that that 22 and a half hours has to be focused on. The other part about soccer teaching you is it teaches you that, this is a work in progress. And I'm incredibly proud to have been around for now multiple decades. And, Mickey and others that were around before, what soccer was and what it is now is night and day. I don't want any of the young players to know about what it was before, all right? And they don't need to respect us for everything that's happened in the past. No, I'm happy because it shows me that we have evolved. It shows me that we have progressed, that we have a generation right now that doesn't know all the crap that existed, that doesn't know all the hardships that existed when it came to whether it's actually playing or find places to play. From a professional perspective, having leagues or not having leagues and leagues folding and all this kind of stuff. That there is a generation growing up now that sees all of those opportunities and all of the things on and off the field that are afforded to them. That, for me, is progress, but that doesn't happen overnight. And soccer will teach you about patience, and soccer will teach you about perseverance, and especially American soccer will do it because of some of the obstacles that we work with and against every single day. But it makes, when those victories come along, we still got a long way to go, that much sweeter. Soccer, in my case, soccer pays you. My job is through soccer. I am incredibly proud that I still get to make a living even though I don't kick the ball anymore, because there's a lot of players that don't and have had to go and do other things. I still am involved in the game, and that is my job. The opportunities that have been given to me, I readily admit and recognize happened specifically, if you really want to point to one point, it's the summer of 1994 and the Men's World Cup that happened in the United States. I lived the power of what a World Cup can do to an individual, and it changed my life forever. And it's one of the reasons why I'm standing in front of you today. Hopefully not the only reason, but certainly one of them. And I love the fact that it did that. And it opened up opportunities on and off the field. You mentioned playing over in Italy. That doesn't come without a billion people watching you in a World Cup. And yes, the way that I looked, the way that I acted, the things that I said, but most importantly, the direction that the ball went, it all played a part. And those opportunities, for the most part, over a number of years, I took advantage of them. I milked it for all it was worth, on and off the field. I burnt it at both ends. I remember most of it, and it was fun. And it was an incredible moment to be a soccer player in the United States. And since then, we've moved on. Back when I was playing, we didn't call it brands. Now athletes call and recognize and look at themselves as brands. But the way that you look, for me, it was about your costume. You mentioned the talent show. I mean, I grew up in a music world in the 70s and 80s where image was a huge, huge part of, we didn't call it the brand, but your brand. And the costume that you put on and the person that you play. And the personality that you have and the character that you play. And I knew from an early age that was something that I wanted to cultivate and that I used. And it doesn't mean that just because you recognize that you are in the entertainment industry and that you are in front of people and people are paying money to watch you play, it doesn't mean that you can't be truthful. It doesn't mean that you can't be authentic. It doesn't mean that you can't be genuine in the things that you do. But it's a recognition that, once again, people are paying money to see you perform. And whether it's on a stage or whether it's on a field, you practice beforehand, you take it out. Sometimes it goes off well, sometimes it doesn't. But a recognition that you are there performing and that you are in the entertainment business, that was something that was made very, very clear to me. And it's probably why I've been able to continue on and go into television, because it's just a continuation. Although I'm not kicking the ball, I'm still playing a character. And I know, like I said, sometimes people cringe when you say that, but in no way does that mean that I'm going on and saying things that I don't believe. In no way does it mean that I'm not genuine and authentic and true when I am talking. But the way you say things is as important as what you say when you are in the entertainment industry, and I don't apologize for that at all. And soccer has done that and helped me. Soccer changes you. Soccer has changed me in the way that I think about the world, in the way that I think about people. I like to think for the better. You know, I talked about the travel and the different opportunities and incredible adventures that I've had. It's changed me for the better in giving me perspective on what's going on out there in the world. Sometimes being a professional athlete, it isolates you. And I'm not whining, believe me, I'm not crying or whining, but you do at times, and rightfully so, you are insulated and isolated. And that can change. That can change you. It can make you cynical. You can look at sports and not, or lose sight of that boy playing on the dirt field. And you have to guard against that. And sometimes you have other people from the outside that will help you out and will tell you you're being an ass, or understand how lucky you are. And we all have to have people in our life that are able to do that. Sometimes you will look at soccer and soccer will say, well, it's just a job. Well, it's not just a job. It's a job that people would kill or die to have. And I am constantly reminded by, whether it's my wife or others, that, you know what, this is awesome. And there are plenty of people that get up and go to do their job that aren't having a good time and don't want to be there. I enjoy what I do, and I'm one of the very fortunate and few people that are able to do that on a consistent basis. Soccer drives you. So when we look at soccer in the United States, and this isn't just, you know, American exceptionalism or anything like that. This is, we want to win, and we want to be the best. And in the world, when it comes to men's soccer, we're not. People ask me all the time, when are we going to win a World Cup? We've won a World Cup. We've won multiple World Cups, okay? Our women are World Cup champions. And, yeah, you can take it. So, being the best and not being the best when it comes to, and it's not just our men's team, it's also soccer. We're not the best soccer culture in the world yet. But guess what? We're also never going to be the soccer culture of Brazil or the soccer culture of Argentina or the soccer culture of Germany, anything like that. It's always going to be American. We have to add that part of winning, which is important in anything, but it's always going to be uniquely American. That's not something to fear. That's something to be proud of. We are going to create an American soccer culture that is uniquely American, as it should be, and it's influenced by the fact that we have so many other sports, that we have all this other stuff going on, and we can certainly take bits and pieces out there, but we have to combine the winning part of it with the pride that we are going to be a different type of of soccer culture compared to everybody else. The diversity. If I ask everybody in this room, whether you're into soccer or not, what's good soccer? I'm going to get 100 different answers, you know, and that's okay. But one of the unique parts about being an American soccer community is that we have such a diversity of thought. And what makes us the greatest country in the world, our diversity, also makes it incredibly difficult when you're trying to, for example, field 11 players to represent this country. And that's part of the challenge. We have people with incredible backgrounds, but very, very different backgrounds that will say, that's good soccer. No, that's good soccer. And they might be completely opposing views. You should kick the ball here. No, you should hold the ball here. And so we have to figure out a way to get through all of that and bring everybody together, and that is not easy. That's not easy, certainly from an individual team perspective, to get everybody on the same page, and you know, coaches out there have to deal with that at times. But it's also not easy collectively as a culture to decide which way we're going to go, because everybody has a different idea. This is how youth soccer should function. This is how the professional game should function. This is what we should be doing. This is how coaches should be trained. This is how referees should be trained. And we should go this way, this way. Everybody's got a different idea. But you know what? That's who we are, and that's what we have to work through. And I know a lot of people will say, well, if Iceland can do it, why can't we? Well, if I have to organize everybody here to do one thing and walk one line, it's going to take me a long time. It's going to be difficult, you know? And Senor Gomez is going to walk the opposite direction because that's what he does, because he's a radical, and I love him. So when I'm looking at the incredible diversity that we have in our country, I do think that it provides opportunities, but it also provides incredible challenges. But this is what drives me each and every day, to try to move forward, to try to get everybody together, to try to get everybody together going in a line. and it's not easy. You know, I mentioned the women's team. I'll be in, as Charlie mentioned, I'll be in France this summer for the Women's World Cup. I've had such a blast working in television for the Women's World Cup and being exposed to these incredible women who I certainly have watched from afar, but when you get immersed in a tournament, especially a tournament like the World Cup, and especially a World Cup that actually features a U.S. team, unlike last summer in the Men's World Cup, and one that's the defending champions, man, that is awesome. And I have had to adjust the way that I view the game, and I have such an incredible amount of respect for the men and women that I work with on air, and certainly the women that are on the field that provide us the entertainment and the success that we can follow. And soccer drives me in the sense that I want to make sure that this is the biggest World Cup anybody's ever seen. I want to make sure that people are introduced to some of these young women this summer that they might not know a whole lot about. I want to make sure that we as a soccer nation, and certainly me as a soccer commentator, that I hold them accountable. And if Becky Sauerbrunn, who's a center back for the U.S. women's national team, messes up, well, it's the same thing as if Matt Miazga, who's a center back for the U.S. men's national team, messes up. And I'm there to tell you that's not good. And I'm there to be critical when it's necessary, but I'm there to be fair. And I love the fact that women's soccer is getting the attention that it deserves. I love the fact that the women's players are getting the attention that they deserve, because they are badass. They are not only great soccer players, but they're just wonderful people. When you get a chance to spend time the way I do with this incredible group, you see a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about here, that commitment to the future of the game, the recognition that they have a responsibility, not just to young girls, but young boys, young girls, and a responsibility to live up to the winning that they have done consistently for many, many years. Soccer exposes you. You mentioned Twitter. Twitter, and everything else. People, when you are a player, certainly when you are on television, are going to criticize you. And that is part of the deal. And if you don't want to be part of it, then don't get into it. You got to have a pretty thick skin to be both a player and certainly to be on television. It's easy to do it from the couch. It's easy to say, well, why is this guy talking about this? Or I don't agree with this. Or why is this player doing this and stuff? It's easy from the bar stool. It's easy from the couch. And nowadays, it's even more easy because everybody's got a bullhorn. And everybody's got a platform. And everybody's got a much more direct way. In the old days, you know, they'd say you could say it behind someone's back or something like that. I mean, look, I've had emails and texts, and people have said it to my face and behind my face and all that kind of stuff. But nowadays, they can go right to you, and there it shows up on your phone. You suck, you know? And then you suck again, and then you hashtag suck and everything. So soccer will put you out there, and certainly for me, it has put me out there. But I love the fight. And part of the things we talk about Cranbrook that teaches you is to not back down from a fight, to debate and to discuss, to do it fairly and to do it with honor, but also to enjoy it and enjoy the back and forth. And one of the things that soccer doesn't have is enough of that back and forth. And so sometimes it gets a little much, and sometimes we go back and forth. But I love the fact that the soccer community is engaged. I love the fact, whether they agree with me or not, to be quite honest, it doesn't matter to me, okay? But I want them to be engaged. I want them to call me out and say, no, I disagree. This player is good, or this player is bad, or this should have been done. And I love that the soccer community is willing to do that, and we don't have enough of that. And certainly relative to other sports in the United States, we don't have enough of that ability to, on a consistent basis, have that type of debate and have that type of discussion. And it's something that I love to do, whether it involves soccer or anything else, to be quite honest. It drives my wife crazy. It drives my kids crazy at times when I will purposely take a different side, and they will say, Dad, you're doing it again. But I want them to have to defend it. I want them to have reasons why they are taking a certain stance on anything. It could be soccer, it could be anything else. And that's what I do. Soccer forces you. Soccer forces you to examine who you are. And when I say you, who we are as a soccer-playing nation. We have a legendary inferiority complex, and we feel we have to apologize for who we are and what we've done, or what we haven't done, or who we want to be, or why we're not further along. You don't need me to tell you don't do that, but don't do that. Don't apologize ever for the fact that you grew up in a country and culture that doesn't have soccer. You are no more or less of a soccer aficionado or fan or supporter if you follow the EPL or if you follow Messi, or you talk about if you call it football or anything like that. No, soccer is for everybody. And when it comes to the American soccer culture, so many times we tend to apologize for what we haven't done. And sometimes we should pat ourselves on the back for what we have done and how far we've come over the last 20, 30 years. It's pretty incredible when you put it up against other sports and other leagues and other things in life. Still got a long way to go. The hypocrisy and the sanctimony and the elitism sometimes that we have as soccer fans drives me nuts. And it drives me nuts because it's detrimental to what we're trying to do, which is to bring everybody in. Bring everybody into the tent. We want everybody in. And we put up sometimes so many barriers because we're snotty about it and we're elitist about it. And we don't open our arms and get everybody into the tent going forward. And so I love the fact that everybody here, as I said, whether you like soccer or not, at least I want to make sure that you know you are welcome. You are welcome in this tent, and I will sit down and people ask me, does it bother you ever when you have to explain what offside is, or when you have to explain what a throw-in is or something? No, I will sit down and I will talk, because if you actually want to talk about soccer, boom, I am ready to go, and I will sit down and I will explain it to you, and hopefully you'll have an understanding when you lead, and we'll do it again and again and again. And the soccer folks, the soccer community out there, for the most part, understand that they are evangelists, understand that they are spreading this gospel. And as I said, it takes time, but it's going to happen. Soccer sometimes limits you. Soccer is no longer underground or niche, but soccer certainly isn't at the level of other sports in the United States. And that means it's hard. It's hard to cut through. It's hard to get promotion. It's hard to get attention. And this has been a constant process, whether it's at a local level or whether it's at a national level, trying to cut through and trying to get attention and trying to get people not just into the tent, but even in the vicinity of the tent to get them in. Soccer can at times limit you. I talked about my kids. When I talk to them about things, it's all in the context of Dad talks about soccer on television. I wonder, sometimes I was thinking about Cranbrook today, and if soccer hadn't been a part of my life, if I hadn't walked down to that corner, or I hadn't had a Thursday night type of situation, if soccer had just kind of come and gone in my life, what I would have been and what I would have done. And I don't know. But regardless, I would have had Cranbrook as part of my tools. And so I like to think that I would have been successful, but you never know. It's fun to think about what you would have been. When you take the road less traveled as an athlete, you sacrifice some different things. And once again, this isn't about sympathy or pity for athletes, because it is a charmed life. And if the worst thing in your life is that somebody asks you for a picture or an autograph, or they're going to pay you money to run around and kick a ball, then you live a charmed life, as I said before. But it is a very, very different type of life. It is a very, very different type of lifestyle. And it also, from a playing perspective, is very finite. And it might come to define you, but you have to live the rest of your life. And that's where a lot of athletes struggle, is when that door closes and that thing you've done since you were that kid running out to that dirt field is taken away and is no longer part of your life. You got to figure out what you're going to do. I like to think that my time at Cranbrook helped me and prepared me to at least be thinking about these things, and tools that, writing tools that I learned, all of that different stuff that a lot of times you just roll your eyes at. You guys will roll your eyes, you young guys will roll your eyes and stuff like that. I'm here to tell you, all right, there's some math that you will not use, absolutely, all right, I will admit that, okay? But there's a lot of other stuff that you will use in one way or the other. It might be direct. I know, you get close your eyes. Don't tell them. Don't tell them. There's some math. But here's the thing. You don't know which math you may or may not use, so you're going to have to figure it out yourself, and you won't know until you actually get there. But soccer obviously has come to define me to a certain extent of who I am. And I mentioned La Cosa Nostra. It is our thing. And just because you're sitting here, you are now part of that family. And it is a really, really interesting family. And it is a family that is now multi-generational. It is a family that, as I said, is no longer niche. It's come above ground. It's a family that looks at themselves often through the prism of soccer and looks at themselves in terms of how they dress, in terms of how they talk, in terms of how they act, in terms of how they interact. There's a soccer culture because soccer is cool. Sometimes it's uncool, and therefore it is cool. And that's one of the things that has always appealed to me about soccer. And it'll go around. It'll be uncool again at some point. But I love the fact that, as I said before, it's being played around the world, but there was an uncoolness to it that ultimately did make it cool. And there's a lot of people that were cool at that point when you were uncool doing soccer that have come around. And you'd be surprised at the amount of people that I know were not soccer fans back in the day that now are wearing their Chelsea jersey and they're talking to me about the New York Red Bulls or why isn't Christian Pelisek playing more and all this kind of stuff. And that's good because they're in the tent. And it doesn't matter if you come to it late. And so I am proud at times to be the soccer guy. I'll go through airports and sometimes people will just look and go, soccer! And it's kind of weird, but it's kind of cool too, And I give, yeah, soccer, and we go the different way on the people mover, and we're off to our different destinations. But that's pretty cool because it's also not something that I ever anticipated. And I'll leave you with this, and that comes back to Cranbrook and the lessons in life. And once again, how fortunate those of us that are given this opportunity to be a part of Cranbrook are in terms of those lessons and in terms of the people that we meet that in the moment influence you, but I will tell you as you get further and further away will also influence you, and you will find moments. And Chris, I share the feeling of going down to the lower field, and despite my mishap on the ice, just going down to that lower field, there are times in my life, multiple times, I can tell you where I was in the world thinking about standing on one of the logs at the lower fields and looking out over the lower fields because of what they meant. There might be other places that are more beautiful, but for me, it's one of the most beautiful spots in the world because of how it shaped who I am as a person. Certainly from a soccer perspective, it's where day in and day out, and certainly those Thursday nights and everything else shaped me and made me a better soccer player, playing against better players like Chris and older players and stronger players and getting my butt kicked. And I will leave you with this before we do some questions. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for what you have given me, for what Cranbrook has given me. The teachers that I have had, the friends that I have had. I don't know if I've answered any of your questions. I don't know if this has given you an insight into anything else other than I like Slurpees. But I wanted to come back. I felt compelled to come back. And Charlie, to be honest, I was coming back no matter what. So because I wanted to be here and I wanted to share with everyone not just how soccer has affected my life, but ultimately how Cranbrook has affected my life in an incredibly positive way. And I brought my children back to Cranbrook for the first time. We were talking earlier, I can't remember what we were talking about it doesn't seem like 30 years ago at all. And it does go like that, and yet you meet people that you went to school with that now have kids in Cranbrook. And I brought my kids back to Cranbrook, and we walked the grounds a few years ago. And to this day, they still bring it up, and they talk about how beautiful it was. Now, they've never gone to a class at Cranbrook. They've never experienced anything like it. It was simply just walking around. And my daughter once said to me, "You were so lucky." And she's absolutely right. I was incredibly lucky. And I'm not going to apologize for it, but I am going to say thank you and to respect and acknowledge the incredible privilege, the incredible opportunities that it gave me, and as I said, the incredible skills and abilities that I've used on and off the soccer field for my entire life. So thank you very much. I'm going to do some questions, and I hope you have some questions, and I want to make sure that I get to as many of them as possible. Is there anybody really, really young that has a question? Oh, you want to thank? No, thank you. That's kind. There's
When are we going to get an MLS team in Detroit?
Okay, MLS, Major League Soccer is the first division league that exists in the United States. It continues to grow. It's 22 years in. Detroit, when are you going to get one? So you almost had one in that you put a bid in, okay? And this is what happened, okay? And I'll be as honest with you as I possibly can. Some very, very rich people, which is a good thing when you're doing a league and when you have a team. They wanted to put a team here in Major League Soccer here in Detroit. This is the new Detroit, and we're knocking on wood that it's going to all go forward the way that we want it to do, and we want it to get bigger and we want it to get better. Having a soccer team here, there is certainly a market. I think it's certainly appealing from a business standpoint. They originally wanted to build a soccer-specific stadium. Nice, cool soccer-specific stadium where you go and you watch soccer. Everybody's close to the field. It's built for soccer. It's really, really cool. It'll be down there with all the other arenas and the other stadiums down there. And at the last minute, they said, no, we're going to play at Ford Field. We're going to play in the football field. Now, that in itself isn't necessarily a problem. There's a team in Atlanta, which is right now the cream of the crop, both on and off the field, and what they are doing from a business and from a team perspective that plays in Mercedes-Benz Stadium down in Atlanta. So that can be done. But the problem was you want to have a soccer-specific stadium. You want to have something of your own. And when they took that off the table, that made it very, very difficult. I still think they're going to come back. Now, whatever the new bid is, it might have a new soccer-specific stadium, or it might still be Ford Field. Regardless, I remain bullish about the future of soccer in Detroit. I think that this is a market that can sustain and not just have it survive, but have something thrive, especially given the people involved. As I said, that's very, very important, but also given what Detroit is becoming or trying to become. And so I hope that that happens in the near future, because I know for a fact that the league, which is based in New York, I know that Commissioner Garber and a lot of the owners look at Detroit as something very, very attractive, and they love rivalries too. And so there's a team in Columbus, there's a team in Cincinnati, obviously teams in Chicago, and so having those local or regionalized type of rivalries is a good thing. So hopefully that happens in the future. So hopefully it happens in mine and your lifetime. So we'll see. Other questions? Anybody? Anybody else? Anybody else? Up there. Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay. You're a proxy. Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay. So the question is why the women's team is more successful than the men's team. Number one, first and foremost, we care about not just women's soccer, but we care about women's sports much more so. Now, some of that is legislated and has been, and Title IX and all the stuff that happened was crucial in terms of making, giving opportunities to women, especially when it comes to collegiately. So we also have put resources and time and energy into our women's program. We would even say not enough yet, but it's so much more than anybody else. And just from a cultural perspective, when you go and you talk to people in Italy, when you talk to people in Brazil, the way that they look at women playing soccer is very, very different. And some of it is just, we just don't care about it. Some of it is, it shouldn't even be done. And this is where I get into the compare and contrast, because inevitably what's going to happen this summer is somebody who's a big men's soccer fan is going to tune into the Women's World Cup because, I don't know, because they want to yell at me, or their daughter wants to turn into something like that. And they're going to say, yeah, but a man would have saved that, or that would never happen in the men's game. That's the wrong way to watch women's soccer, okay? And women's players will tell you this. That's not the way it is. And you're doing the sport a disservice, and you're killing your enjoyment for something that can be really enjoyable. And once I got past that, and I know it's difficult at times to do it. You know, the ball will go in, and you'll say, yeah, but if this player, and pick your player, had been there, this would have happened. No, but that's not the way that you watch it. You know, it is all relative to the people that you're playing, and in this case, it's soccer. I don't care if it's men's, women's, or co-ed naked. As long as people are kicking the soccer ball, I will be, which would be good. Co-ed would be good. Co-ed naked? Ratings. That would be good. We got to write that down. I love soccer. I want to go watch it, and I don't care ultimately who is playing. And this dumb compare and contrast that I get is going to be done. you're not going to enjoy it as much. But ultimately, to answer her question, we cared about it more. We put resources in. We made laws that made sure that it was going to progress, and we got a hell of a head start on the rest of the world. But we got to be careful because they are catching up. Especially this summer in France, the actual host country, France, is a very, very good team. And can you imagine if France wins back-to-back World Cups, having won in Russia in the Men's World Cup this past summer, and then wins on home soil, and that certainly can happen. We don't want it from a U.S. women's perspective, but they're coming. And not just France. You got the Netherlands. You got England. And they're recognizing that, yes, it's the right thing to do, but there's also a business behind it, and they recognize that this is something that they need to do in order to be involved in the world of soccer. And while we recognize it as a country, what's been unfortunate is that FIFA, the governing body of soccer around the world, has been so slow to recognize it, and at times is maddening in terms of the way that they view it. And so hopefully that gets going, because if they put all of their efforts and all of their weight behind women's soccer, it can make a huge, huge step. And not just for the U.S., okay? We're well on the way. But once again, that person, when I was that kid juggling in the sidewalk and the kid on the other side of the world was doing that, what we want is when a woman and a young girl is juggling on the sideline, that they know that there's somebody else on the other side of the world. And unfortunately, in a lot of countries, that's not the case, either because they're not exposed to it or they're not allowed to do it. They don't have the resources to do it. Okay. Other questions? Yes, ma'am, up there in the green. Decide to do it? So I went to Rutgers University, which is in New Jersey. It's the state university. I went in the fall of 1988. I graduated in the summer of 2014. So it took a little detour. I remember walking in line, to do the walkout, and I had the cap and gown and everything, and I turned to my neighbor who was supposed to walk, and I said, "Hi, how you doing?" I said, "How old are you?" She goes, "22." I said, "I'm 44. I'm double your age." And it was very, very strange, but I was very proud. But what ended up happening was, once I had gone through Rutgers and I had completed my eligibility, I got called into the U.S. Olympic team, and I played in the Olympics in the summer of 1992. And when you play for the national team, it opens up incredible opportunities. I talked about 2 years later in the summer of 1994 playing for the national team. So you get picked with teams, and this is sometimes, when young folks ask me about soccer, sometimes it's not the best players. I readily admit that I certainly wasn't the best player that America has ever produced. Sometimes it's about timing. Sometimes it's the soccer god's smile. Sometimes there's a coaching change, or somebody gets hurt that plays your position. And these are all opportunities. And sometimes you're just in the right place at the right time. When I was born, the U.S. World Cup happening in the summer of 1994, all of those different things combined gave me those opportunities. And then, you gotta take a hold of them, and things happen. You get hurt, you get changed, and all that kind of stuff. But I did not grow up thinking I was going to be a professional soccer player. That's not. I don't say that with. That's not good from a soccer perspective. I want kids to grow up thinking that that's something that they could possibly do. Now we know that 99.999% of them will never ever have that opportunity. Okay, but I was growing up at a time where that didn't even register. That wasn't something that I even thought that I could be doing. And so each and every opportunity that I got, I said, look, if this is as good as it gets, this isn't something I ever thought was going to happen, so I'm going to milk it and have a great time, because I don't know if it's going to ever continue on. So, other questions? Up there. What's your name? Huh? What did you play on the team? You do? Okay. What position do you play? Center back. Oh, I love it. I love it. Cristiano, I don't think might have done an appearance with him, but I don't think I've met him. No. Why? What do you want to know about him? Do you think he's the best player to ever play the game? What do you mean? Who do you think the best player is? Messi? Messi? Come on, he's got 1 foot. He's like 4 feet tall. Have you seen Cristiano Ronaldo? Come on. Messi's only played for one team, all right, Barcelona. He was cool. He was brought over when he was a young kid, all right, into this little incubator, all right? He was put into this little thing and said, oh, Messi. He was given all the opportunities, and there was no outside influence. He's only played at one team as opposed to Cristiano. That man got out of his comfort zone. That man went from one country to Portugal. Then he went and did it at Manchester United. Then he went and did it at Real Madrid. And now he's doing it over for Juventus. That man is one of the greatest players ever to play the game, and certainly better than Messi. Go to commercial. I know I bullied you. Come on, you got to stand up for Messi. You said you're a moron. How is it possible that this guy who had growth problems, he's only 5 foot, he's only his left foot, and yet he's turned out to do it? You've seen the things that he does. There's so much more romance in the way that Messi plays. He turns. Cristiano Ronaldo, it's all about taking his shirt off. It's all about him. Messi is just this humble man who just wants to please us. He just wants to please the soccer gods. He's playing for you. He's playing for everybody. You know, something like that. That's what you got to come back with. All right. Yes, sir. Okay, all right, you're a Messi fan. Yeah, so when I was playing, I did a couple of, I took a, well, we called it stepping aside. I took a year off. When I mentioned that I took advantage of all those opportunities on and off the field and burned it at both ends, it takes a toll at some point. And there came a point where I said, I need to step away from the game. And I took a year off. And as is the case with some of these stories, there was a girl involved. She then became my wife, but I chased her down for that year. So I put it to good use. And I rejuvenated physically and mentally and came back. But at some point, that door closes. And they say, I'll never forget, I walked into the coach's office and he said, it's not happening. We're going in a different direction. I said, well, I'll take less money. It's not about money. We're going in a different direction. And that door closed. And this is why when professional players ask me for advice, I say, if you see a jumping off point, look real hard at it, because it might not be there when you want. Everybody wants to retire and walk off the field, and the confetti's coming down. But the recognition, I knew that I could have continued to play for some years, but there was an opportunity that came about to go into the front offices. I did the front office for a while and learned a tremendous amount about the business of sports, about myself. I learned about how people will tell you that you can take what happens in the locker room and just apply it to the office. No, you can't at all. And imagine you'll get thrown in jail if you do a lot of this stuff actually in an office. But leadership and leadership and motivation, and a different type of leadership, a different type of motivation. So I don't recommend getting fired, but I got fired, and it was one of the best things that's ever happened to me, because I was offered an opportunity to go and do some television. And I meet so many people in my line of work that are passing through and using it as a way station. It happens for all sports. There's this, guys just, let's just do TV for a while, and then I'll get a front office job, or I'll get a coaching job or something like that. And you can get away with that for a little bit, but I believe that ultimately that will manifest itself in your performance, and you're cheating not only yourself, but you're cheating the viewer. And I never want to cheat the viewer, and I'm so lucky that I found something that I'm a junkie for. I love it. I can get so much better at it. I want to keep doing it. And I want to be around people that are equally as passionate about it. I don't want to be around people that are just using it as a way station. And so I started working for ESPN for a number of years, and then I went over to Fox 2014 went over to Fox, and they're very, very different ways of doing television. It's not better or worse, it's just different philosophy, but I've found something, once again, that I love, that puts me in the incredible minority of getting up each and every day and doing something that I love. They can pry it from my cold, dead hands, because they're coming. All those young bucks that are finishing up that want to go on television, and they all ask me about, how do I get on television? How do I do this? Because they recognize that this looks cool, and then you find out that it's a lot of work, and it's not once again, you're not sitting on your couch anymore, and you're not sitting at the bar, you're not sitting on the sofa, or you're not watching it on your phone. You're actually doing it, and that red light will turn on. And your ability to be informative and entertaining, and to make sure that you do it in the amount of time, you got people screaming in your ear and all that kind of stuff, and to constantly churn out opinion. And sometimes that's, in the greater scheme of things, it's the easiest thing ever. But when you're in it, you're trying to generate constant takes and constant opinion. It's not always easy, but I found something that I like to think I'm okay at, and I want to get better at, and certainly from a day in and day out, I get excited. I'm up at 3 o'clock in the morning this Sunday going to do Bundesliga, and I'm driving, the only person actually driving in Los Angeles, and actually driving and moving in Los Angeles at 3 a.m. in the morning, and it's awesome. And I pinch myself and say, this is the best job in the world. Yes, sir.
A few comments about your hockey career.
Okay. There's only so I grew up, as I said, in Michigan, and I grew up, as we know, it's the law. You have to play hockey, and I grew up going down to Corton Lake in Birmingham when it was frozen over, and I learned how to skate there, and then we froze over the neighbor's driveway and did all that. So I did all of that type of upbringing when it came to hockey. I remember playing at the Cranbrook rink when it didn't have walls, way before you guys were around, and the wind would whip in side to side and do all that, and Abner Oakes would be screaming and yelling at me and doing all that, who was the coach at that time for me. So hockey, and we were talking earlier, I can't remember who I was talking to, how it's changed, and the fact that soccer players play soccer and gym, and that's all they do. When the soccer season would get done at Cranbrook in the fall, the next day I was out there on the ice. Soccer was done and hockey started. And I actually, if I calculated it up, I probably think I played more hockey than soccer growing up. I still have an incredible love for hockey. One of the things that turned, when I got good at soccer, obviously it propelled me in that direction, but I loved the people involved in soccer. And as you guys know, hockey people they're strange. They're wonderful, but they're very, very strange. I see my coach up there. And I loved the culture and the people and the teams, and we were so fortunate to have our own rink. I grew up with, in the Kelly era too of hockey, and I remember with getting the key and going in midnight and skating on the ice rink and learning how to skate and just having it constantly there at our disposal. And it made me certainly a better hockey player. I still play hockey to this day. I don't play a lot of soccer. I still play hockey to this day out in California in the adult and beer league type of existence late at night, which is very fun, and I enjoy it. I enjoy it so much. I'll tell you this hockey story. So my son is 10 years old, and when he was born, immediately I got the Red Wings jersey, and I started to make sure that I'm setting him on the right path for the Red Wings, right? And was it 2 years ago? And I thought we were doing great. And a year ago, he came to me and said, "Dad, I kind of want to follow the Las Vegas Knights, all right?" And it occurred to me that I follow the Red Wings in the context of them being good, okay, and having a history of them being good. And this poor 10-year-old who I had subjected to the Red Wings stuff from an early age would sit on the couch and watch Red Wings games. And at first it was just making the playoffs, and we held, that was such a crutch, just making the playoffs, right? Now we don't even make the playoffs, and it broke my heart because his whole context was these guys suck. And Dad's making me watch this, and so I totally understood it. And by the way, if you're going to go follow a team immediately, it was not bad. Las Vegas for what they did. So he has moved on from the Red Wings. I still remain a ardent, fervent Red Wings supporter, but hockey is still a big thing in our house. Where me and him have a fantasy hockey league, and we do all that. He doesn't play it; he just likes to watch it. So, yes, sir. So Christian Pelisek is a young player who burst on the scene over the last couple of years. He's been playing over in Germany for Borussia Dortmund, and this past transfer window, he was sold for, $70 million to Chelsea. So he will be going over to England to play. And this is one of the great hopes that we have. We love to build them up and tear them down sometimes, but this guy is the real deal. He is going to be going into a situation right now at Chelsea where Chelsea's struggling to find out exactly who they are, so maybe he'll be looked at as the savior. I think it's a seminal moment. I think it was done for business purposes also, because these are all global brands. These are all super clubs that are not just trying to entice and to lure people domestically, but all over the world. And having an American, I will watch soccer, but there's more chance of me actually watching a Chelsea game specifically because Christian Pelisek is there. And that's me. There's other people too that will say, well, let's find out what this kid is all about. I think he's going to struggle with the pace, just the general speed that England has, in the quickness that they play, especially relative to what he has experienced in the Bundesliga. I also think he's going to struggle. He's not a very big guy, and that doesn't necessarily mean anything, Messi, right? But he's not necessarily a big guy. I think they're going to kick him, and he's going to have to find a way to deal with that. But I don't think this is a problem. I think it's a great thing. I think it's a great thing for American soccer. I think it's a great challenge for him. He's coming from a nice cocoon again over at Dortmund that has positioned him well to deal with this type of stuff. And it's the biggest transfer in American soccer history by a long shot. There's a lot of pressure on him, not just to lead when he goes to Chelsea, but also to lead the U.S. men's national team. And I'll segue into the U.S. men's national team after the failure that we had, and it was a failure not to qualify. I hope that there is, and I think that there is a rejuvenated type of feeling from the men's team, from the men's coach, and from these men's players to take ownership and to say never, ever, ever again. We are not going to let that happen on our watch. This is our team now, and Christian Pelisek, I think, has to be a huge part of that going forward. Yes, sir. What's the what? Juggling record. So, I don't know. I mean, I do remember being probably your age and going out on the front street and tempting records and getting to 100 and doing all that. So, I don't know. What's yours? 10, you think? I think I can get 10 or something like that. And then you just do left foot, and then you just do right foot. And then I always played in the air. I always loved to head it, and so I used to definitely go over 100 when it came to heading the ball. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there was a lot of heading going on. So, yes, sir.
Well, thank you. There were some of us who, you mentioned Ted Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't coach to win necessarily, but we had an objective out of sport. What do you think sport taught you?
Yeah. So the question was, what did sport teach me? The interaction with people in a high pressure type of situation, when to pat someone on the back, when to kick them in the butt. Those types of things are important. The dynamics of a locker room. And while I said it doesn't always translate, taking it into corporate America or something like that, there are certainly lessons that you can take in terms of how you express yourself one-to-one as opposed to how you're expressing yourself to a bigger group. The motivation, how volume doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have the reaction that you want, and sometimes being quieter, more quiet is important. And those types of things. The competition, I like to win. I'm not ridiculous in terms of winning, but the competition, especially when people say you can't do something. We've all been told at times, you're not tall enough, you're not good enough, you're not fast enough, you're not strong enough. Everybody is, or you're not smart enough, a million different things. And being able to harness that feeling that you feel when somebody says something critical about you, and harness it and then put it back into what you're doing. And sometimes it's just wanting to shove it back in somebody's face. But if you can harness that on a continual basis and have that fuel you in a good way, I think you learn a lot of that from different sports. Yes, sir, in the maroon. All right, so so who's your favorite player? Like who doesn't suck for you? Martial. Oh God. All right. So he wanted to know Romelu Lukaku, who is I think a very, very good player. And you know, there's coaches here, and it's one thing that I've never done, and I've never really had a desire to do. But I have an incredible amount of respect and curiosity when it comes to coaches and how they, make it to your point, how they motivate, and how some coaches can get a player to be here and some can get a player to be here. In this day and age, especially when it comes to big teams like Manchester United, it seems the coaches, they call them managers, will come in and the first question they ask is, how much money do I have? And the whole concept of coaching a player up, it's kind of gone out the window. It's, all right, you have this much money, then I guarantee you that we're going to end here in the table. As opposed to saying, we're paying you to come in, we know what these players are, we know what this team is, but you have to individually get them to go from here to here. And that ultimately is what a good coach is, okay? And if anybody can come in and get them here, that's fine, they'll go get anybody. But if you come in and actually coach them up, as opposed to saying, this guy's not good enough, I need to buy a better player. Okay, fine, anybody can do that also. You just go buy better players, better players, better players, and better players. But the good coaches, and there are a bunch of good coaches that I see here, can take players and make them this much better. Even the best coaches can't make a player completely different. They can't make them faster. They are what they are. But they can make them smarter. They can make them access as much of their talent as possible, and that's done different ways, times once again with a pat on the back, times once again with a kick. But it's recognizing what they're good, what motivates them, all of those different things. And it fascinates me to see someone like Lukaku, who I do believe is a good player, but under one coach, he's one player. Under another coach, he's a completely different player. And it might be because he has a problem, or he needs to be specifically coached and talked to in a way that gets the most out of him. Okay, a couple more, right? We still got a couple more. We got a little more time? I don't want to keep everybody here. I know it's hot. Yes, sir. So Jurgen Klinsmann was the previous coach of the U.S. men's national team. He was in charge of the team that ultimately didn't qualify for the World Cup, and he's no longer the coach anymore. A new coach named Greg Berhalter has been named. He's a little younger than me. I actually played on the national team with him. This is the first time the men's national team has ever had a coach who actually played on the national team in the modern era. So I think he's a really good coach. And I've spent some time with him actually over the last couple of months. And a lot of times you'll sit with coaches and there's coach speak, and you know they'll talk about X's and O's and here or there. He's very, very clear as to what he wants to do. He recognizes I don't have to agree with. I'd much rather have you show me that you actually have a plan, even a flawed plan, than no plan at all, or try to BS me with something that you have. And I think he's been really, really honest and upright. I mean, he sat us down and he said, tonight, this is what I'm going to try to do. And coaches don't do a whole lot of that. Number one, either they don't want to do it, and the dirty secret is a lot of them don't know, and they can't do that. But he sat us down and said, this is how we're going to play, and this is what I'm trying to do. So when the goalkeeper gets the ball and plays short out to the right-hand side, you, Alexi, in your makeup up there, and you start screaming and yelling when that guy that he played it to loses the ball. You need to understand that the reason why we are doing that is because I want to give that player, put that player in a situation where he has to receive the ball and then play the ball forward. And you could easily just kick it forward. Mom. He could just easily play it forward. So I like Greg Berhalter, but ultimately he's going to be judged like every coach on the results. But how he's getting those results, I think is, at least small sample size so far, been very, very interesting, and so I remain optimistic. But ultimately, he's got to qualify the team, and it shouldn't be a cause for celebration, although we didn't qualify the last time, so it can only go up. He's got to qualify the team and then do well in a World Cup. And the interesting thing is, in 2026, we are getting the Men's World Cup back, and we're sharing it with Mexico and Canada. Most of it's going to be in the U.S. That's the prize. And if Greg Berhalter does well with this team, then they're going to continue on, because that's the team that you want to be on. That's the team that you want to coach, because once again, it's going to be that seminal moment. And there's a kid out there today that we may or may not know. Maybe he's with the team now, or maybe he's still young. And by 2026, he's going to be part of that team that's going to live that power that I lived. And I can't wait to see. I may not know him, but he's going to live that power, and that's a cool thing to have happen, and you want to be a part of that. And if Greg Berhalter plays his cards right, he might be able to take 2 cycles and be there in 2026. 2 more? Yes, sir. The World Cup expanding. I have no problem with it, because it's more games. I think the world that we live in, especially when it comes to the men's game, I think it can expand, and we're going to be okay. I also, I think about this past summer watching a team like Panama, who had never been to the World Cup, and see how important it was to those players, and the tears streaming down their face when they're standing there with their hand over their heart singing the national anthem, understanding that they are representing not just themselves and that team, but representing that country, and that pride that they felt of being part of that team for the first time. I would never want to do anything that was going to take away that opportunity. Yes, I want it to be special, and I want it to be earned, and teams to go that deserve it, but I want those moments more. I want those moments of tears streaming down the face. I want that pride of a nation that's never been before being on display for the world, and that advertisement to the world. So I think it's definitely going to happen. It's just a matter of is the Men's World Cup going to expand in 2022 in Qatar, or is it going to it's definitely going to happen in 2026, but they might do it in 2022. I hope that it happens only in 2026, and we get to be the first expanded World Cup. Last question. Anybody? 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 Sir.
What was your opinion of the Spanish League's idea of playing fixtures in the U.S., and do you think something similar could ever happen in the future?
Yeah, so La Liga, which is the Spanish league, recognizes, as all leagues do and as all of these global businesses do, that there is an incredible emerging market that they want to tap into, okay? If you're a fan of Major League Soccer, it's not that there's not soccer fans. It's just not enough MLS fans. There are soccer fans all over the United States. And whether it's Real Madrid or Barcelona or any of these teams, they recognize that they need to be global brands, and they need to go into the market that is the United States soccer community, and they need to win hearts and minds. So it didn't surprise me in the least that they wanted to do it. The Players Union fought back, but I think that these types of things are going to happen. We see it obviously in NFL with the way the NFL plays and goes over to England and down to Mexico. So I think it's going to happen. But ultimately, it comes down to, and probably this is a good place to end it, it comes down to the fact is they see this market, and they see this valuable market out there, and they want these American soccer fans. As different and strange and unique and going in different directions as we all are, there is a soccer market out there, and they want to make sure that they're planting their flag. And if you're a local team, whether it's Detroit City FC or it's a Major League Soccer team, you want to make sure that you're there, and you don't want people coming into your market to do it. But that's part of the competition going forward. I'm not sure that it even would have been approved ultimately for it to have happened, but they recognize that for their business and for their global brand, this is a place that they want to be. And if it happens, other countries will do it and continually will do it. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Lexi, thank you very much for spending the time with us.